You know, we all think we know their stories. Mary Magdalene, Marilyn Monroe, Tracy Lords. But what if I told you that for centuries, the truth about these women has been shaped, twisted, and basically sold to the public? Well, today, we're gonna pull back that curtain and get to the real story.
Okay, so it really does sound like the beginning of a bad joke, right? A biblical figure, a Hollywood legend, and a really controversial star from the 80s walk into a bar. But the answer that connects them, it stretches across 2,000 years of history. And it's this: they were all trapped inside powerful myths that completely buried the truth of who they really were.
So, how does a real, living, breathing person become a myth? Well, it all starts with a process we can call the constructed woman. This is where complex, messy, real lives get boiled down into these simple and usually pretty damaging labels by really powerful institutions.
I mean, just look at this. The gap between what people think and what was real is absolutely staggering. The Bible actually shows Mary Magdalene as a major leader. She was there at the crucifixion, she found the empty tomb, and get this, she was the very first person chosen to go tell everyone else about the resurrection. They literally called her the apostle to the apostles. And yet for centuries, the story we've all heard is the one about the redeemed prostitute. That myth doesn't just twist her story, it completely erases her authority.
And look, this isn't just some dusty old pattern from ancient history. Let's jump forward to a much more modern icon, Marilyn Monroe. The myth, we all know it. The breathy voice, the giggly, dumb blonde. But the reality? She was an incredibly sharp businesswoman. She got so frustrated with being typecast and getting paid way less than her male co-stars that she went and started her own film production company. She spent a whole year studying serious method acting, and she fought the studio system tooth and nail for control over her own career. That whole persona was an act, but the industry found the simple, profitable myth much more convenient.
And then we have what is maybe the most troubling example of this, Tracy Lords. The public myth was the princess of porn, this powerful, in-control star of the adult film world. But the reality behind that stage name was Nora Kuzma, a traumatized and abused teenager who got into the industry when she was only 15 using fake IDs. The powerful myth wasn't just wrong, it completely hid the vulnerable, exploited child at the heart of the story. Of course, these huge, culture-defining myths don't just pop up out of nowhere. They're often cemented in place by one single pivotal moment, a defining scandal that locks in the public story, sometimes for generations.
You can almost think of it like a machine, you know? It's a four-step process. First, you take the real woman. Then, a powerful institution. It could be the church, a Hollywood studio, an entire industry steps in. Third, they use some kind of powerful narrative tool. A famous sermon, a media scandal, even a federal investigation. The final result? A lasting, simplified myth that just sticks in our collective brain. So for Mary Magdalene, we can literally trace this myth all the way back to a single day. Back in 591 AD, Pope Gregory I gave a sermon, and in it, he basically mashed her identity together with two other women from the Gospels, one of whom was that anonymous sinful woman. And just like that, with the power of his office, he created a story that would stick for over 1,300 years. Incredible. Now with Marilyn, her defining moment was a scandal that the studio decided to use. See, she had posed for some nude photos back in 1949 when she was totally broke. When those pictures came out years later, the studio didn't try to hide it. No, they did the opposite. They leaned into it, used all that controversy to stir up public interest and sell more movie tickets. It just doubled down on her image as a sex object and made it that much harder for her to be seen as the serious actress she was dying to be. And for Tracy Lords, that moment came in 1986. An FBI investigation finally revealed the truth. She had been underage for her entire adult film career. Now this legally reframed her as a victim of a crime, which was true. But the massive scandal that followed also trapped her, permanently linking her identity, both her real name and her stage name, to the very abuse that was committed against her. But here's the thing, and this is maybe the most important part of this whole story. These stories don't just end with the myth. No way. Each one of these women, in their own time and their own way, fought like hell to take back their own story. Mary Magdalene's fight was,
Well, it was a long one. It was carried on for centuries by scholars and theologians who knew the truth. And then finally in 1969, the Catholic Church officially corrected the record. And then, just a few years ago in 2016, Pope Francis went even further. He gave her a feast day, putting her on the same level as the male apostles, and formally restored her true original title, Apostle to the Apostles.
Marilyn, on the other hand, she was not waiting for history to fix things for her. She took control herself. I mean, in an era where actresses were basically property of the studios, she started her own production company. That was a huge, radical move. She then went and studied her craft with the best acting coaches out there and used her new power to force the studio into a much better contract. And in the end, she won a Golden Globe, proving to everyone she was so much more than a bombshell. And Tracy Lords, she absolutely refused to be defined by her trauma. She just methodically, piece by piece, rebuilt her entire life. She studied acting, just like Marilyn did, and started earning legitimate roles in mainstream movies. But she didn't stop there. She launched a music career. And, maybe most importantly, she seized total control of her own story by writing a best-selling autobiography. So when you look at these three incredible, very different journeys, they all seem to point to one huge question about power, about myth, and about legacy. Whose story is it to tell anyway?
This quote from Tracy Lords' book, wow, it just hits you. Instead of letting her past chase her forever, she turned around and faced it head on. By legally taking the name that the whole world knew her by, she took ownership of her entire story. The good, the bad, all of it. She was basically saying, nobody else gets to define me, I do.
And we really need to start thinking about Marilyn's legacy in the same way. The whole tragic victim narrative is just as much of a myth as the dumb blonde one was. The woman was a fighter, she was a powerhouse. Time magazine even called her a shrewd businesswoman. She took on one of the most powerful systems in the world, Hollywood, and she carved out a space for herself on her own terms. And with Mary Magdalene, setting the historical record straight has had this profound modern impact. When you strip away that false story, she's reclaimed for who she actually was, a central, pivotal leader. For so many women today looking for models of faith and leadership, her true story is this incredibly powerful source of inspiration that was basically hidden for over 1,000 years. So in the end, what this all shows us is that stories, especially stories about powerful women, are so often built by the people in charge. But it also shows us that those stories can be challenged, they can be reclaimed, they can be rewritten. Which kind of leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. When a story has been told one way for so long, who really gets to write the ending?